We're having demonstrations at the U.S. Embassy in London to express their unity with the struggle of African people here in this country. We think it's extremely important to say something about why we do the Black is Back Coalition. Because the fact is that there are marches happening all the time. And then in many ways, St. Louis has become the capital of protest demonstrations. And it has been said before that you need to say, what is it you're fighting for? Because you can be emotional all the time. It's like being on a treadmill. You can get on a treadmill and run as fast as hell and you're not going anywhere. And unfortunately, that's what's been happening to us for a long time. That's why they killed Malcolm. That's why they killed King. That's why they've removed Marcus Garvey from your memory, because these were people who had objectives that we were fighting for. Especially Malcolm and especially Marcus Garvey. They were both moved by the understanding that African people have to have power. Power is not some empty concept. Power is concrete. It's real. If you want to have power, that means you want to have the right to govern yourself. There's something sick about a situation where a hostile force would first come to our Africa, which was the center of the universe, where human life itself began. The richest continent on the planet Earth in terms of material resources. And they didn't just come to get people because they needed people to work. They stole our science as well. They brought people who were experienced in rice farming, who had other kinds of talents and expertise. This is what they stole from Africa. And they created a whole new world. By 1500, Portugal alone has stolen something like 700 tons of gold from Africa. This is what was happening to us. That's part of what happened. You're talking about a situation where tiny, raggedy-ass England, with that woman Diana that you fell in love with so much, the queen, the princes, and things like that. They make fairy tales and have little African girls wanting to have some relationship with this fairy tale. England was a country, a tiny, cold, barren rock. Yet, up until the Second Imperialist World War, they control a quarter of the world's population and a quarter of the territory of the whole planet Earth. England! And this is how England got rich. And this is how Portugal got rich. And they built an entire world economy off what they were stealing from Africa in particular, but from other colonized and oppressed peoples around the world. This is what we have been enduring all this time. When we march here, I see all of these happy-go-lucky, arrogant-ass white people who make a certain assumption about their rights to be here and have everything they've got. And the fact of the matter is, I know, and you should know, that the reason there's no food in your refrigerator is because it's in their refrigerator. You should know, like I know, that the reason there's no money in your bank account is because it's in their bank account. This is the relationship that we are having to deal with, that we've been dealing with all our lives. But they criminalize us. And they tell us that we've been living off the welfare of white people. When the truth of the matter is, white people have been living off the welfare of Africa and African people for the last 600 years. So we're not here to say something, to chant you to sleep by saying things like Black Lives Matter. Because that doesn't mean anything. What does that inform you to do? Black Lives Matter. And you get upset because Joe Biden won't say it, or he did say it, or somebody else won't say Black Lives Matter. In fact, they'll all say it. You saw the whole U.S. Congress come out and say Black Lives Matter and put on kente cloth from Africa and take a knee. Right? They do that for Colin Kaepernick Well, they came out and took a knee. That was supposed to satisfy you. Silly symbols like this. We don't need symbols, we need power. And this is what this is about. So the African People's Socialist Party, I want to be clear about this. We are a revolutionary organization. We know that black people will never have power unless we take it back. We know that it's going to take the same thing to end our oppression that it took to make us oppressed. We're going to have to cut, shoot, and bomb our way out of the circumstances that we're confronted with today. That's just the truth of the matter. That's just objective reality. I heard somebody stand here, I think, today, and they were talking about how, we have Sister Lisa Davis, the vice chair of this coalition, who stood up and talked about how impaired we are physically and even psychologically living under these circumstances. But there's a remarkable man whose name is Frantz Fanon. Let me see the hands of people who heard of Frantz Fanon. And Frantz Fanon, who was from Martinique in the Caribbean, that was colonized and still is colonized today by France. Right? We are in Martinique, the party, African People's Socialist Party, in Guadeloupe. But Frantz Fanon, he said, how do you cure the colonized? He said the colonized is cured by killing the colonizer. That's the way the colonized become cured. And in order for us to win our freedom, we're going to have to fight for it. There are not enough prayers and incantations that you can do that's going to get us out of this. We are going to have to struggle to make that happen. But you got to want it to happen. You got to want to have power. You got to want to be self-governing people. You got to want to get rid of neo-colonial puppets who represent white power and blackface. You got to want that, and you got to have the courage to be organized to make that happen. I am the chair of the African People's Socialist Party, and one of the reasons we are here today is because when the American government destroyed the black revolution of the 60s. They are the ones who killed Lumumba. The United States CIA was part of the thing that killed Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba, one of the greatest revolutionary and patriots of African people. They're the ones who overthrew Nkrumah in Ghana. They are the ones who've done everything. They captured, wounded, captured, and murdered Che Guevara in Bolivia. They are the ones who have been against the freedom of our people all along. And then they left us with these neo-colonial puppets. Somebody stood here and talked about how once upon a time that the mayor here bragged about the fact that she was on the platform with John Lewis. That ain't nothing to brag about. That ain't nothing to brag about, because John Lewis was one of those people who would tell you that the way you get free is to vote. Well, what the hell are you going to vote for? The fact is that the elections in this country are nothing but non-violent contests between sectors of the ruling class for control of this system. It is non-violent contest, except with the Trump thing. What you saw, that they did not resolve this question with the election around Trump. And so the sector of the ruling class still control the state, other than Trump. And that's why you've seen this big mess that's happening around Trump. And that's all what the other thing that you saw. That's a statement of the crisis of the system. January 6th. January 6th. When those white people, these are colonizers themselves, attacked other colonizers, tried to overturn the government here. And you are depending on those people to protect us? You are pretending on Joe Biden to protect us? You don't even know what kind of government's going to be in place if you take the power. If you don't take the power. You've got a situation where already they're organizing throughout this country, doing everything they can to make it difficult, if not impossible, for black people to vote. They're passing laws everywhere that against protesting, so they can take your right to vote, and then they can put you in jail if you protest about it. This is what's happening in this country today. There are groups of thugs with pinstripe suits who hang out in air-conditioned offices and things like that, who actually are in charge and are moving to take away anything that looks like a right that you have. That's why this attack on so-called immigrants. Here you got thugs who would leave Europe, leave England, because of poverty and disease. They would get rich or through stealing black people, through stealing this land that we stand on today, through stealing resources all around the world that goes to them at our expense. Well, I'm not one of those who's going to tell you that what you should be involved in is a movement against racism, which is a movement to make white people love you and like you. That's not what it's about. And so what it is about is we have to have the power. And we have to have the courage to do that. And so one of the things that we did after this government murdered King, murdered Malcolm, shut down so many forces around the world, we began to reorganize to complete the black revolution of the 60s. Because the 1960s was a time in history where revolution was the main item on the agenda. All the peoples in the world were fighting to get white power off of our backs. We were a part of it too. And they succeeded, the government, this government, in murdering a lot of people to stop that. They didn't just kill Lumumba, they cut him up in little pieces. They put him in vats of acid and burned it and what have you. There's a cracker who has a tooth, one of Lumumba's teeth, that he took from them. They overthrew Nkrumah. They murdered Malcolm X as an example for everybody. They didn't have to kill Malcolm like that. They didn't have to kill King like that. They could have made it look like they slipped in the bathtub and hurt themselves or had a car accident. But they wanted to set an example for you to make sure that you know this is what's going to happen to you if you stand up. So we are back making this revolution. The African People's Socialist Party has been determined to complete this revolution, to pull our movement back together after it had been scattered. After so many assassinations, after so many jailings, after so many destroyed organizations, we worked to pull it back together. And this coalition is part of that process of the revolution being pulled back together, being given a single voice. So we have a national black political agenda for self-determination that black people around this country can unite with. We have a situation where there is coherency now, growing coherency to our movement, and we've been successful. And that's why every time you look up nowadays, you see somebody talking about colonialism, settler colonialism. They weren't saying that just a few months ago even. But it's a coalition under the leadership, with the influence of the African People's Socialist Party, has revolutionary theory that has pushed this to the agenda. And they can't solve a single problem that they have, and we want to make sure that what we do is to make this revolution that's going to free us. And the final thing I want to say, brothers and sisters, is this: that we are in this country right now, but the truth of the matter is that we're African people. I'm not saying this loosely, like Pan-Africanists say we are all African or we're African peoples. I'm saying that we are part of a single nation that has been forcibly divided, forcibly dispersed around the world. And our conditions everywhere on earth, whether it is in some place in the Caribbean, or whether it is here in Houston, Texas, or whether it is on the continent itself, every problem that we have, comes from the attack on Africa some 600 years ago that stole black people, stole our resources, stole our dignity and what have you, and we're going to have to take it all back. We are one Africa, one nation, one Africa, one nation of people. And we have to become clear on that question, and that's fundamentally important. So thank you much, and I'm very glad everybody came out. Please remember, on tomorrow, starting at 10 a.m., we're going to be having a virtual conference where we're going to be able to deal with some of these issues with much more depth than what we've been able to do today. I want to thank all the representatives of the steering committee organizations who were able to be here today. Comrade Vice Chair Lisa Davis went through the whole list earlier today of the steering committee. I want to thank Comrade Brother Zaki Baruti from UAPO, the Universal African People's Organization. They showed up. I want to thank the African People's Socialist Party members. They showed up. I want to thank the African Black Committee for Black Advancement and Defense from Tampa, Florida. They showed up. The African National Women's Organization on the steering committee, they showed up. And there are various other forces who are members of this coalition who showed up. The International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement, they didn't just show up, They sent the international president here to speak to us. And so I think that's a powerful thing to recognize that has happened. We got a powerful movement here. It is in its incipient stage right now, but things are changing. And we know things are changing if you didn't know it before. Afghanistan. 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 They painted the people in Afghanistan as terrorists and whatever you. They occupied that country with the most vicious kind of military forces. They put more than $1 trillion there to keep them down. They built an army of Uncle Tom's, 300,000 strong, for 20 years. The people in Afghanistan with their own organization worked, organized on the ground. They recognized that you can't win it necessarily overnight, just like that. They were not out there singing, "We shall overcome." They were not out there saying, "Afghan lives matter." They demonstrated that the life of the Afghan people mattered because they took control of Afghans' life in their own hands. That's what we are about. That's the movement that we have to have. That's the cadre organization that must emerge for us to win our freedom. And it takes extraordinary discipline, dedication, because no people on earth who've been enslaved, who've been oppressed, who've been colonized, has ever won its freedom without first building an organization of steel, disciplined cadre, where revolution is the actual thing that we are fighting for. We are professional revolutionaries. Revolution is our profession. We may be barbers and some are. We even got a couple of lawyers, some are, in terms of their occupation, house cleaners, some are, in terms of their occupation, but their profession, revolution. So I want to thank everybody for coming here and express appreciation, especially for the representatives of the organization, the steering committee who did show up. And Uhuru, Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back.
Black is back. Black is back.
Black is back.
Damn, black is back.
Uhuru.
Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Uhuru.
Uhuru.
Go to Black is Back Coalition Facebook page to watch it online. Black is Back Coalition, follow them on Facebook, and Bernie Spear Media YouTube page. See you later.